Copilot X now is out. And it is a major advancement for developers as it is one of the tools that can make building apps faster. But how can we use this powerful tool to help us build apps that we really want? To solve this question, our speaker will talk about the basics of prompt engineering, and how we can effectively use Copilot X as our partner for developing awesome apps. Let's all give a warm welcome to Senior Developer at KPN, Mr. Seiji Ralph Villafranca.
All right. Yeah. Hello, guys. Welcome again to my second session. So this is my second session already for SoftCon. And once again, thank you for inviting me again. And yeah, this is my first time having two sessions in one conference. So yeah, I think we can start already. So I'll just share my screen for a while. All right. Okay. I guess you can now see my screen. All right. Okay. Yeah, once again, thank you everyone for joining my session, and I see a lot of people are joining, and I think you are all interested in learning Copilot. I think you all know Copilot since generative AI um, is now evolving nowadays, and it's really popular since marami na siyang natutulungan developers. So yeah, we will be focusing on Copilot, but at the same time, we will be focusing on how to use it correctly. So this is knowing prompt engineering. So yun, I'm not sure if all of you have attended my talk yesterday. So it's about builder.io. So nabanggit ko or nagkaroon ako ng konting pahapyaw when it comes to using generative AI, specifically Copilot. Because builder.io or builder.io, you can also use builder.io with Copilot. So that's one usage of Copilot. So kaya niya mag-generate ng designs from Figma, and it can inject that generated code into your code base. So that's one use only of Copilot. So right now, yun yung usage. So in this talk, kailangan nating malaman kung paano ba talaga gamitin na maayos si prompt engineering. So guys, same as always, I want you to be interactive and magtatanong ako ng mga questions later on our talk. So gusto ko kayong makausap. Alright. So yeah, for those who doesn't know me yet, I'm CG Ralph Villafranca. So currently I live in the Netherlands. So I'm a Filipino developer and I write code, I teach people, and most of all, I drink coffee. So for those of the developers or that are coffee lovers, so yeah, pwede tayo maging barkada dyan. And yeah, I am a developer, as I have said. I'm currently a senior developer here in the Netherlands. I'm already here for, I think, 1.5 years already. And also, I'm a community leader and speaker. So since still, although I'm still here in the Netherlands, I still have my organization or community in the Philippines, which is Angular Philippines. So I still hold that community. And also, yeah, I'm an author of a book. So my book was released last year. So it's about Spring Boot and Angular. So for those who are beginning to learn full stack web development, so yeah, you can grab my book in an Amazon or just in a hard copy in Amazon or a Kindle copy. So yeah, that's it. So enough about me. So yeah, a while ago I have said that we will be talking about Copilot, specifically the prompt engineering. So what is the objective of our talk for today? So the first one is, syempre, learn what is Copilot. So sa mga hindi pa nakakarinig ko ano or hindi pa familiar kung si Copilot, so I will introduce you what is Copilot. Second is, yeah, what is prompt engineering? So yeah, I think you have heard prompts already. So this is the details that we are trying to write, but there's another way on writing this, and this is called prompt engineering. And third one is combining the two to make an effective result. So, syempre, there's a copilot, there's the AI, and there's a method called prompt engineering. So we want to combine the two to make or have an effective result for this one. All right. So, yeah, Copilot, what is it? So, guys, alam ko sobrang popular ni Copilot. So, sino nakagamit na ng Copilot dito and paano niyo na siya nagamit sa daily work niyo? So, I want to know your answers. Yeah. So yeah, let's be interactive, guys. So message kayo dun sa chat box. So how did you use Copilot in your daily work? Yeah. Yeah, from Kim, yes, you have used it. So I think for your QA, I guess, I'm not sure. So sino pa yung mga nakagamit and saan nyo siya nagamit? So just give your experience on using Copilot and siguro ano ba yung is it a bad experience or is it a good experience? Yeah. Yep, we're the same. Actually, for Victor, we're the same. Ginagamit namin siya sa unit testing, actually. And for programming also, auto completion, yes, that's the common. Tama. Uh, Python, yeah, backend dev yan. It's also, yeah. So, great experience. Good to know. Kasi kami hindi. Minsan hindi. I use it for code. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Alright. Yeah, all right. So yeah, thanks everyone for your experiences. So yeah, in our case, so sa company ko, so we are slowly integrating generative AI already. So we are actually using several uh generative AI tools. So number one is Copilot and number two is Microsoft Bing Enterprise. So yeah, our Copilot, so we are actually utilizing it in different ways. So just like others said, I forgot the name, but yun, ginagamit ni Francis or ni Victor for unit testing. So it's the same. So we're also using it. So in other cases, it's also being used for automation test. So for automation engineers. So marami kaming pinagagamitan ni Copilot. So I think you all know Copilot already. For the people who doesn't know what is Copilot, so from Google, so it's an AI pair programmer that offers autocomplete style suggestions as you code. So you can receive suggestions from GitHub Copilot either by starting to write the code you want to use. So in summary, so it's a generative tool. So it provides all of the code that coming from your comments or dun sa mga tina-type mong functions. So simply for auto-completion. So but syempre, it's not just an auto-completion. It's an AI. So it's a generative tool that generates code based on the context of what you write or what you give on your code. So, what is good about Copilot? So, if gusto nyo magamit or if you want to use or integrate Copilot in our or in your project, so marami na siyang extensions or pwede na siya maging plugin sa iba't ibang IDE. So, number one is Visual Studio. Number two, NeoVim, VS Code, the common used uh, editor. And lastly is JetBrains. So marami na siya. Ito hindi lang ito, but these are the famous IDEs and editors that we have. So Copilot is easy to integrate. So as I have said, Copilot is a generative AI. So there's a lot of generative AI that is already available in the market. But one is Copilot. So we are focusing on code generation. Iba-iba ang generative AI. They have different usage. But Copilot focuses on auto-completion of code. So generative AI. So concepts behind generative AI. So first, before I continue, so ano ba ang mga nagamit nyo ng generative AI through your daily work, guys? So gusto ko ulit malaman. Yeah. Yeah. So Copilot is one of the generative AI that we have in the market. So ano pa yung mga iba nyong nagamit nyo? Kahit hindi sa daily work, kahit may mga personal projects kayo or yes, yan. Hinintay ko yan, Midjourney. Actually, ginamit yan sa softcode. Llama, I haven't used that, but I've heard of that. Bard, yeah, ChatGPT. I'm using Bard also and ChatGPT. Codium, haven't used that. That's nice. And GPT-4, yeah, Copilot, behind, yep, stable diff, okay. So yeah, actually most of it I've used it already. Tab 9, yeah, I haven't used that, but I saw that. So Copilot, Bard, and ChatGPT, that's the most common used generative AI tool. So, yeah, thank you for the answers, guys. So, kung mapapansin nyo, mostly are generative for code. But there are different kinds of generative AI. So, for example, si Bard and ChatGPT, they're not just for codes. They're also used for essays, for emails, templates, and other stuffs. So kahit ano, pwede nyo itanong, kahit yung sa cooking stuff. So it's more general. So it's more of like an informative generative AI. So meron din tayong tinatawag na Midjourney. So this is more on generating images. So iba-iba ang use ng isang generative AI. So yeah, that's generative AI. But if you think behind or if you think deeply behind it, so maisip nyo na how the heck does generative AI happens? Because it can answers most all of your questions. So paano nangyayari yun? So I am not teaching AI at deep, but I just want you to know what is happening behind in generative AI. So this is the layers that we have. So the number one is the data processing layer. So this is the this is the one collecting or preparing and processing the data from various sources. So basically, this is the first layer that we have. Then, number two is the generative model layer. So, in the summary, ito lang yung nag-generate ng bagong content. So, the data processing, it holds the current content or the content being provided by the user. And the second layer is the generative model, which provides the new content based from that current content. So, this is the one generating the result. Then number three is the feedback and improvement layer. So AI is not just generating some stuff. It also learns from itself or from other users as well. So it improves the generative model's accuracy and efficiency. So users also helps on this way. So hindi lang siya nag-generate but it also studies the results and the given data. And number four is deployment and integration. So summary, it's just where we deploy and integrate the models and the AI itself. Right. So there are different types of generative AI. So nagkaroon na ako ng konting summary a while ago, like sa mga sagot nyo. So like Midjourney, ChatGPT, and other stuff or other generative AI as well. So merong iba't ibang klase ng generative AI. So number one is diffusion model. So they are using different types or different ways on how they can integrate generative AI. So it's not important for us to understand it deeply, but ito lang yung mga way kung paano nila generate or nagkakaroon ng outcome sa isang content. So diffusion model, so these are generative models that determine vectors in latent space through two-step process during training. And number two is variational autoencoders. So this consists of two neural networks typically referred to as encoder and decoder. And number three is generative adversarial networks or GANs. So it's a generator that generates new examples and a discriminator that learns to distinguish the generated content as either real or fake. So yeah, you will question me, what the heck is this, Sir CG? So ito lang naman yung mga models or ito lang yung mga ways or types or methods na ginagamit nila to generate an AI. So bakit may iba't ibang types? So it depends on their efficiency, on their speed, and on the performance of generating an AI, especially the accuracy. So ayun lang yung mga differences ng types na to. So we will not go there deeply. So yeah, using generative AI. So first one is on language. So ano ba yung mga saan ba natin ginagamit si generative AI? So number one is language itself. So marami na tayo, ito yung common, ito yung ginagamit natin. So based especially sa mga developers, even sa mga marketing people. So we are using it by generating a new language or a new language. So for marketing, note taking, code development, email, and essay generation. So I think this is the most the commonly way on how we use generative AI. So second is visual. So like Midjourney. So in Figma also, like I have mentioned a while ago, so it's also generating visual contents like video generation, 3D models, and image generation. And last one is the auditory. So it can also or generative AI can also be used to generate music generation and voice generation based on the genre you want or the beat that you want. So ito lang naman yung mga use ni generative AI, but there's a lot else on how can we use generative AI in our work. So yeah. Okay. So that's generative AI, guys. So we will not move deeply into generative AI. I just have an introduction, but let's go back to Copilot. Right. So how does Copilot work? So sa mga familiar, sa mga hindi pa familiar, so Copilot it offers suggestions from a model that open AI from billions of lines of open source code. So Copilot basically focus on generating code. So sa mga nakatry, so you can actually integrate or install Copilot. For example, you're using Visual Studio Code. So it's just an extension on your Visual Studio Code, and after installing, and you are ready to go. So Copilot does all the suggestions based on your files, based on your base code. So it actually analyzes your code. So it can generate a more accurate code based on your function names or comments or your on your instructions. So how does Copilot work? So si Copilot, gumagamit siya ng models ni uh, ChatGPT, which is yung OpenAI Codex. So same sila ng ginagamit. But syempre, since Copilot focuses on code, so it uses the public code on the internet. So the first one, for example, this is your local, this is your private code. So the private code provides the editor context. So syempre, para maka-generate si Copilot ng isang result or isang code na kailangan niya ng context. So doon niya malalaman kung ano ba dapat yung mga code na ipoproduce niya. Then, after that, so si Copilot, it will use the OpenAI codex and it will use that models on the public code on the internet. So it's actually using the open source projects on internet. So simply, si Copilot is from GitHub. So it's getting the code mostly all from GitHub. Then next, after that, so it generates the code, so it provides us suggestions. So now it has suggestions on their private code. But that doesn't stop there. So yung private code nyo, syempre, kaya nyo i-improve pa yan. Magkakaroon kayo ng mga suggestions or other instructions. So that will also help Copilot improve its own suggestion. So that's machine learning also. So it will improve the code that it's producing. So that's Copilot. So yeah, as you can see, there's we can highlight this one, the public code in the internet. So that's actually a debate for now, since on the security. So later on, we will discuss that also. Okay. So syempre, kung naiisip nyo na ngayon, parang pag-iisipan nyo, lalo na sa mga hindi pa nakagamit ng Copilot, sa mga nasabi ko, it's a best of both worlds. So parang na-entice na kayo gumamit ng Copilot. Hey, I can use this Copilot just to help me generate code. Sobrang ganda kung tiisipin nyo. But syempre, AI has also its limitations. And Copilot has its limitations and challenges. So, syempre, AI itself is not perfect, especially generative AI. So, number one is quality of output. So, we don't expect for Copilot to write the whole code for your application. That's not how the way it is. So, Copilot is not magic. So, kailangan niya ng kapartner. So, it can have a lack of data, lack of models, poor training. So, kung hindi natin ini-improve yung AI itself, so it can produce low quality of output. And especially pag masyado ng complex yung models, meron tayong tinatawag na hallucinations or over-reliance. So, ayun yung nagiging cause ng problem na to. Number two is bias. So, training data contains biased information. So, this is one of the common problems of Copilot. So, if we have a bias model na, for example, it only pertains to one information, so don't expect that your output will be good. So, this is also a problem of Copilot, specifically generally AI. Number three is safety and security. So this is what I mentioned. So generated data can contain false and malicious information. So this is also based on the models. And for Copilot itself, syempre, nagbe-base din tayo sa public code. So we are still responsible for the generated code from Copilot. So yeah, just want to give you one example. So this is not related to code, but this is related to ChatGPT. So AI can produce false information. So in this case, ChatGPT invents academic papers. And based on this paper, it doesn't even exist. So it has even fake page numbers. But if you will look at it, and for me, for example, I would say that looks real. So that's not a good quality, and that's for your safety and security. It can cause malicious information. So that's one of the major disadvantages of using AI. So, yeah, kapag nagbasa kayo ng documentation ni Copilot, so this is from GitHub. So it will say that you are responsible for ensuring the security and quality of your code. So we recommend you to take the same precautions when using code generated by GitHub Copilot that you would when using any code you didn't write yourself. So that's a precaution from GitHub. So syempre, we don't rely wholly on the AI itself. That's why it's Copilot. It's an assistive or it's an assistant tool. So we are still responsible for the code. And I'm not sure if I also included it here. So for example, the security of the code itself, the quality. So it's still our responsibility to check this one. So maraming tools see GitHub. For example, yung code coverage, yung um, mga checking ng code, Sonar Cube. So you can still use that. And that's highly recommended. And especially sa mga sarili natin, pwede naman tayo mag-check. So it's still our responsible for the generated code. Right? Yeah. So that's the problems of what we usually encounter in generative AI. So right now, let's move to the solution itself. So sabi ko nga, hindi tayo dapat mag-rely sa AI itself. And we just don't command AI itself. So dapat pinag-iisipan natin yung mga instructions natin, yung mga functions natin, and the standards of the code. So even though we have this amazing tool in our side, we still need to have proper way of coding and instructions. So this is prompt engineering. So yun, before we go again, so sino bang nakarinig na sa prompt engineering? So prompt is different. So meron na bang nakarinig ng term na prompt engineering? And kung meron man, so ginagamit nyo ba siya or ina-apply nyo siya sa work? So actually, in our case, in our company, we're actually using prompt engineering already. So meron na ba? ChatGPT plus Midjourney. Yeah. I also use that. It's fun actually. So meron na ba guys nakagamit ng prompt engineering? Meron. Yeah, for prompt. So yeah, prompt, we're actually doing prompt. But yeah, we have a method called prompt engineering. So, meron ba? Wala pa. I guess wala pa, no? Wala pang ano ng prompt engineering. So, ayan, si Jeco, if I'm correct. Yeah, okay. So, yes, prompt engineering. So, ito lang, yung, I think this is the best way to understand prompt engineering. So AI needs to understand you better. So that's the only sentence that I need to tell you what is prompt engineering. So AI, as I have said a while ago, it learns from the user. So it needs a proper instruction. So yes, we are creating prompts, but these prompts should be structured carefully, structured um, structured in a good way na mas maiintindihan ni AI. So, let's make it in a real life. For example, there's a girl named Jane Lee, and there's a boy named John Patrick. So, they're boyfriends and girlfriend. So, they have good communication, they have a better output. So, it's actually a two-way. So, ano ba mangyayari if your partner has a good relationship? So, it's equals forever love. So, yun lang naman yan. So, I think that's the best way on how to explain prompt engineering. So, if you put yourself in Copilot, so that's why it's named Copilot. So, dapat magkaroon kayo ng magandang relationship. So, it learns from you and you also learn from the AI itself. So, in a serious note, what is prompt or prompt engineering? So, pwede natin siyang hatiin. So, it actually depends on the context kasi. So, if we want to place it in a context on a developer of ML researcher, magkaiba siya. So, I know you know prompts already. So, sa prompts, it's the code blocks, the individual line of code or natural language comments a developer writes. So, this is actually the context that we are giving. And for an ML researcher, it's the compilation of IDE code and relevant context. So it's actually mostly it's mostly the same. But for prompt engineering, so for the developer, it's the method of providing instructions or comments in the IDE, but in a better way. So, ini-engineer natin yung mga instructions, yung mga functions na ginagawa natin in our code. And for ML researcher, it's the algorithms that will generate the prompts. And the context itself, so these are the details that are provided by the developer. So the context, dito nagbe-base yung isang AI. And ML researchers, it's the algorithms that will generate prompts. Mali to. Yeah, tama. That algorithms to send a large language model. So these are the one sending the models to the AI itself. So that's prompt engineering, prompts, and context. Okay. So why is prompt engineering important? So I think based on my description, I think you know it already. So dun lang sa magpartner, I think it's very important for us to have prompt engineering in Copilot. So actually, it's not just for Copilot itself, but it's for all the generative AI we have in the market. So yeah, ito yung pinaka best example. Oops. So in this goal, we have generated an ice cream using p5.js. So we have used Copilot. So the prompt is draw an ice cream, come with an ice cream cone using p5.js. So yes, as a person, I understand that statement. So it's just an ice cream, draw an ice cream. But is it specific or is it enough for the AI to understand? So let's see. So dito sa right monitor natin, makikita natin, nag-draw siya, gumawa siya ng function, yes. But the output, does it even look like an ice cream? No. Kung titingnan nyo, baliktad na ice cream na parang ABS-CBN na I don't even know what is it. So parang natapon na yung ice cream. So hindi kayo nagkaintindihan ni AI. What the heck is that? So hindi tama yung pag-prompt natin. Yes, you've used Copilot but not in a good way. So let's have another example. So revising the prompt earlier. So our goal is still, let's generate an ice cream using p5.js. So the prompt is this one. So compare nyo dun sa prompt kanina. So kanina sabi ko lang, yeah, draw an ice cream with a cone using p5. That's it. But in this one, it's more specific. So draw an ice cream cone with an ice cream cone using p5.js, but with bullet points. So the first one is, yeah, the ice cream cone will be a triangle with the point facing down, wider part at the top. It should have a light brown fill. Then the ice cream scoop will be a half circle on the top with a light pink fill. And the third bullet is the cherry will be a circle on top of the ice cream scoop with a red fill. So, makikita nyo sa right side, nandun yung comments ng developer. And you can see the output. And yeah, it looks like an ice cream. So it's not, yeah, it's just p5.js, guys, but it did the work for you already. So you had the right output already. So mas nagkaintindihan kayo ni AI kasi in-specify nyo. So it's more of the communication. Right? So yeah, AI is progress over perfection. So it's always a trial and error. Parang buhay lang. So it's a trial and error phase with generative AI technology. So it's also a challenge for providing generalized prompt crafting tips because syempre, we are not in control of the models itself and meron din tayo sarili-sariling problema as developers. So this topic that I'm talking, it's just a tips or it's just our recommendations. It's not really an assurance for you to have a better output. Yes, it will have a better output, but not the perfect output that you want. So we are just trying to make the output better and better. So yeah, it's from if you want to read their blog, it's from Rizal Scarlett and Michelle Mannering. So they're actually writing blogs about Copilot. So this is the link. So later on, I will share my slide. Yeah. So nakita nyo na kanina yung importance ng prompt engineering. So I've shown you one example of best practices, and that's using bullet points or using a specific output. So let's have the list of best practices that we can use for prompt engineering. So the first one is to set the stage with a high-level goal. So ano bang ibig sabihin nun? So for example, if you have a blank file or empty code base, this is the best recommendation that I can give to you. So for example, nagkakaroon kayo ng bagong project or project from scratch. So this is the tip that you can use. So bakit? ito yung times na walang context si Copilot. So, anong iisipin nyo dito? So, dapat mas maging specific kayo dun sa gusto nyo mangyari. So, think like you're having a conversation with someone. So, for example, I'm the new developer and you are instructing me something. So, syempre, hindi tayo pwedeng maging vague dun sa mga instructions. We want to specify all the things that we want for that developer to learn and to know. So, dapat maging aware tayo dun sa mga details na sinusulat natin. So, let's have an example. Building a markdown editor in Next.js, for example. So, this one, we have a very specific way of writing the prompts. So in this case, we want to have a markdown editor. So syempre, hindi lang naman natin sasabihin kay Next or kay Copilot rather, na just create a markdown editor that where can I edit. But in this case, ano ba yung gusto natin maging standard ng code? Syempre, hindi lang yung output. So, for example, we want to create a basic markdown editor in Next. And what are the utilities or what are the code that we want to use? So, syempre, we want to use React hooks. So, create state mark for markdown with default text type markdown. So, for example, it will use the use state function. So, makikita niyo dito. So, uh, meron siyang gumamit siya ng hook na use state. So, nandun siya. May default value. Then, a text area where users can write down. So, naglagay siya ng text area. Then, support for basic markdown syntax like header, bold, and italics. So, meron din tayo nun. So, na-cater din niya yun. And, ginamit niya yung React Markdown NPM package. So, nag-install din si Copilot ng package. And the markdown text and resulting HTML should be saved in the component state and updated in real time. So, you can see here na hinimay-himay natin yung criteria na gusto nating magawa ni Copilot. So, it knows every step that it needs to do. So, that's how this setting the stage a high-level goal. So, this is highly recommended for from scratch projects, I would say. Okay. So the next one is aim to receive a short output. So, paano ba natin ma-achieve yun? So, we should plan carefully or articulate the logic and steps it need to follow the achieving that goal. So, actually, same siya medyo nung previous output. So, let the AI slowly understand you. So, AI is AI. It's not a person. So, it's a machine. So, it should also have a better way of understanding, and one of the way is to make it slowly understand the details. So, for example, we have to create a function that reverses a sentence. So, let's see on this image. So, we have commented, so reverse a sentence. So, the start of the new sentence must be capital. And next one is no other part of the sentence should be capital unless it's a name. And fourth is the end of the sentence must contain the correct punctuation, and it will generate the function itself. So, dito, gumawa tayo ng first comments, but in the example, so the developer is also placing comments on the function itself. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? So, we are not fully relying on the AI itself to generate the whole function. So, hindi lang tayo nag-stop dun sa first four comments. So, that's how this tip works. So, mas magkukuha natin slowly yung gusto nating code na gine-generate. So, yeah, in this case, isa-isa. So, by chunks. So, hindi niya generate yung code as a whole. So, that's how we do, or that's how we generate the code. So, we don't want, yeah, we can still generate the code or the function as a whole. But for example, masyadong malaki yung implementation ng function. Syempre, hindi naman natin makukuha. There's a small chance that the function will be written as good as what you want. So, in this case, mas nahihimay niya paunti-unti yung code natin. Right? So, that's the example of this. So, the next one is give Copilot an example. So, Copilot needs a context. And sometimes prompts are not enough. Copilot also bases on the files, on the base code that you have on your application. So learning from examples is not only useful for humans, but also for your AI per programmer. So it's machine. It's a machine. It's learning from different code also. So, syempre, hindi naman siya pwedeng kumuha lang dun sa public internet because it's not your code. So, it also learns from your private code since dapat dun talaga siya nagbe-base. Especially dun sa standardizations na ini-implement natin sa isang code. So, let's have an example. So let's say we have an example like this one. So map through an array of arrays of object to transform data. So ang gusto natin is ma-map yung mga arrays. But in this case, yun lang yung comment natin. So what it did, so ang name dapat yung may ma-map natin dito. So it's data.map x and meron siyang nilagay na x.name. I don't even know where that came from. So HTTP colon that's not the thing that I want. So ganyan lang yung ginawa nung Copilot. And the results are undefined and undefined. But it's really a bad output. So what if we did it like this one? So map to an array of arrays of object, and we have an example. So extract the names from the data array. So the desired outcome is John, Jane, and Bob. So Copilot has an example. So as the written code or as the generated code below, so makikita natin na tama na yung results. It has generated the right code that will produce the right output. So if you have an example, Copilot will make it easier for you guys. So that's how we can do it. So it's not just comments, or it's not just for comments, I would say. It's also for your code also. So ito sa example na to, pwede rin tayo maglagay ng mga examples like ano ba yung dapat output or ano ba dapat yung magiging result ng isang code. So that's the tip that I would also recommend. Right. So the fourth one is experiment. So as I have mentioned a while ago, the process of having a better output using generative AI is trial and error. So experiment yourself. So everything is trial and error. So prompt one, write a code for user.ts, write a function that gets the list of users in user.ts, and implement a function that gets the list of users and display the first name, last name, and position in user.ts. So uh, in this case, ano ba itong mga sinabi ko? So the first prompt is generate it, write a code for user. So syempre, ano bang code yung gagamitin ni or anong code ba yung dapat sulat ni Copilot? So I think it will not produce a good output. So the prompt 2 is write a function that gets the list of users. So Copilot is getting a context slowly. Then prompt 3 is implement a function that gets the list of users and displays the first name and last name. So mas nagiging detailed yung prompts natin. So this is experimenting. So pwede niyo mag-trial and error kung ano ba yung pinaka-better na details na nagamit nyo for generating a code. So this is actually common way also. And fifth one is neighboring tabs. So what is neighboring tabs? So simply, ito yung mga naka-open na tabs sa Copilot nyo. But if I remember in the latest, I'm not sure if it's released already, in the latest release of Copilot, I think they will still analyze the code even though you don't have neighboring tabs anymore. So kahit hindi nyo ino-open yung tabs, so it can still generate the code for you guys. So neighboring tabs, it basically means that yung mga naka-open na tabs nyo, for example, you want to generate unit tests, so you should open the base code for your unit test. So that, for example, sa VS Code, naka-open lang yung files nyo. So that's how neighboring tabs work. So yeah, for example, ito iba-iba to ng language, but yeah, it will based on the tabs that is open on your application. Right. So that's all of my tips. So you can try it, guys, if it's really recommended or if it's really effective, I would say, on generating the result of your code. And try, and I guess baka sa inyo also, or for you guys, you also have an idea on how can you engineer uh, a prompt better to have better outcomes from AI. So in our case, in our company, we are also doing this prompt engineering since we are utilizing generative AI a lot already, and we want to have the best output for our application. So marami na kaming pinagagamitan. And we have different methods on prompt engineering, how to make the output better. So yeah, you can also try this one if you are already utilizing Copilot or other generative AI in your company or in your work. So my last advice is, yeah, from a friendly neighborhood reminder is be responsible on your code. So yes, in companies we don't use public, for example, Copilot or ChatGPT. We don't use uh, the public source. So why? Because it it can cost a lot of trouble. So ina-analyze yung code natin. It generates also different codes. So dapat maging aware tayo dun sa mga nagiging output ni Copilot. And meron kaming own server that holds our own models, but we are still using the codex models, but we are also adding some vector spaces, for example, para ma-search yung mga sarili naming documents. And especially, syempre, yung code natin, we don't want it to be sent, or we don't want it to be analyzed and sent it to the server and be used by other people as well. So yes, be responsible in your code since this is AI. So meron din tayong tinatawag na mga governance AI na nag-handle ng mga ganitong privacy and security. Right. Copilot X, what's next? So, ang Copilot X is just like a term. So, what it means that what's next for Copilot. So, ano pa ba yung mga uh, upcoming na features na pwede natin gamitin si Copilot X? So, the first one is, yeah, for pull request. So, it can also be used for pull request. So, pwedeng mag-track ng work nyo, mag-suggest ng mga descriptions. So, you don't have to write the descriptions. So, it will only base on the changes that you have for your pull request, and also help reviewers reason about your changes and with a code walkthrough. Then there's also a Copilot chat already, so it can actually guide you. So it's like the Copilot, the basic Copilot, but you can chat on VS Code already, so you can try that. Then Copilot for Docs, so ginagamit din namin for documentation yung generative AI, but we're not using Copilot for that one. So it's spend less time searching and for more time learning. So it can actually generate documentation for you. Then Copilot Voice also, it enables voice-based interaction with GitHub Copilot, bringing the tool's benefits for those who can and can use a keyboard. And Copilot code referencing, so yeah, for code suggestions in public repositories. And lastly, for Copilot for CLI. So CLI is just for using CLI to ask GitHub Copilot in your terminal. Right. So yeah, that's it for my talk for Copilot. So nagbigay ako ng mga reference. So i-send ko ulit yung link dito mamaya. So how I used GitHub. So sinama ko si Builder.io dito kasi meron din Copilot si Builder. So this is my talk yesterday. So the next one is how I used Git Copilot to build a browser extension. So it's another there's a lot of recommendations or tips on how can you use Copilot in building stuff. So how GitHub Copilot is getting better at understanding your code. So this is to understand more Copilot. And also, you can check out the latest GitHub preview. So, nandito lahat yung mga pinakita ko kanina, which is like yung GitHub Copilot for pull requests, so for code referencing. So, it's all here. So, yeah. I That's all for my talk. So, yeah, it's just a simple talk. It's for me to let you know that AI is very useful, but at the same time, you should use it responsibly. And syempre, we want better output always. And these are the ways that I can share to you guys. So yeah, thank you guys for listening to my talk. Again, I'm CG Villafranca. So if you want to connect with me, so I will share my slide later on. So this is my LinkedIn, CG Ralph Villafranca, and I also have my website, cgvillafranca.com. And yeah, I'm a mentor also. So if you want to ask questions, so our connection doesn't end here in this talk. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's connect there, guys. And if you have other questions as well. And yeah, that's it. Once again, thank you guys for attending again my talk. And I hope you learned a lot for using Copilot. And yeah, thank you. And if you have questions, just go on to the chat message. Right.
Thank you very much, Seiji. It's really good to have you again this year. And I'm so glad you actually had two sessions from yesterday, right? One from yesterday and today. So not
Yeah.
only have our participants learned from you, but they also have a lot of questions that they would like some answers. I'll be asking you a question from Jellica. When using Copilot, especially when refining code suggestions from Copilot, how do you ensure that your private code remains private?
Yeah, thank you, Jellica, for the question. So actually for our case kasi, meron din kaming private talaga na server. So we have a governance AI. So there's an AI lab that we call. So I can't say much anything about that because it's private. But they're the one who's actually doing the lab for our models. So nandun lang talaga yung code namin. But syempre, pag gumagamit kayo ng public source, so you wouldn't assure that your code will be safe. So that's why for companies, we have rules and regulations. So that's governance AI. So that's the one regulating our code. So meron kaming tinatawag na enterprise. So nandun lang sa private. So yung mga models namin, so we have the models on the public, but at the same time, meron din ginagamit din siya. We have what we call the vector search, if I remember it correctly, sort of for the space. So ginagamit 'yun for searching our own documents. So meron access yung own generative AI dun sa document. So for example, we want to uh, access yung mga documents namin on our own company. So we can also do that, but by using the generative AI. So yeah.
Thank you very much for answering that. Here's another question from Kim John. What are the best practices in prompt engineering that you would like to recommend to developers to ensure that Copilot X effectively aligns with their vision when building apps?
Yep. Thank you, Kim, for the question. So yeah, I think yun yung mga recommended ko, yun nasabi ko kanina. But I think the best way is you still maintain your code standards. So dun kasi nagbe-basic code pa, si Copilot. So if you have uh, if you have the standards, yung mga gandang standards na we follow. So for example, if you're building Angular, React, or even .NET, so may mga standards tayo dyan. So follow it. So Copilot could also follow it. So I think that's the best recommendation for me.
Hey, thank you very much for answering that question. Uh, JC is asking what metrics or evaluation criteria do you recommend for assessing the quality of prompts and responses?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question, JC. So yeah, metrics or evaluation. I think yun first is not really a metrics, but it's really hard to have a number on the code itself. But I think sa documentation natin. So for example, we follow some documentation on the code standards. So that's the first one. Kapag nag-generate siya ng code and na-follow niya yung standards na ginagawa namin, so that's a good output. But that doesn't stop there. The second one is we also have checks. So for example, we have the Sonar Cube, we have unit test, code coverage. So it depends actually on the context eh. So sa unit test naman, nag-generate siya ng unit test. So tama ba talaga yung mga generate niya? So it depends on the context talaga. So yun yung ang current common na ginagawa naming evaluation if it does really produce a better code. So you will see it for yourself. But usually code standards, Sonar Cube, kung nagpapamapasa ba siya or wala siyang mga uh, linting errors, for example. So ganun yung mga usual na evaluation namin na ginagawa.
Thank you, Seiji. So Anna Lo also wants to know among all generative AI, what is the best that you can recommend?
Oh, okay. What is the best that I can recommend? Hard to say, guys. But, well, we compared it actually. So I'm not sure sino yung mga fan ng Google. Not sure. But I think, well, they use different models kasi. Like, well, opinion, guys. I am not sure. But since, syempre, sino ba yung number one search engine sa whole world? It's Google. So they hold a lot of models, right? So I think it will be Bard. But that's just my opinion. I'm not sure about that. So you can try it for yourself, guys. Marami kami nagamit.
There you go. Thank you, Seiji. I hope you got your answer there. Okay, here's another. Here's a specific question though from Ryan Nell, related to only prompt engineering. Does a prompt yields the same result every time, especially if no other context is given than the prompt itself?
That's a very good question. So actually sa trial and error nararanasan namin 'yan. So sometimes yeah, it produces the same result. So paano pag ganun, actually it's kind of frustrating, right? Na why the heck? Well, bakit ito pa rin yung result niya? I'm doing every prompts. So ang ginagawa namin doon usually is uh hindi lang doon sa comments, hindi lang sa prompts. So it's the code itself also. Maybe it's getting from a wrong output. So kailangan din nating mabago yung code natin. So that's what I'm talking about a while ago. So we also need to do the standards itself. But in some cases, syempre may limitations din sa AI. And that's the limit eh. It produces the same output. So nangyari na sa amin yan one time. What we do is, it's the developers. So do the code first and the AI will learn. So ganun yung ginagawa namin.
There you go. Thank you for answering that question. So here's another one from Victor Raffles. I'd like to know your thoughts on the usage of Copilot in test driven development. How will it help the development team to implement such practice?
Yeah, good question. So we're actually doing it for test driven. So for example, we have unit test, yeah, E2E. Uh, for code generation. So that would help you a lot, guys. So even for test cases we haven't used it. Eh. But for E2E kasi, so for example, you have the test cases already. So since sometimes E2E, we have boilerplate codes, eh, even though, especially in unit testing, integration testing. So ano yan eh, mayroong mga boilerplates. So instead of doing that again and again, and at the same time, yung may mga parts din na parang uh, yung pag-get ng mga elements in E2E, for example. So actually, Copilot helps for that a lot. It will reduce the time and effort for the automation engineers to bake or to code that. So I think dun sa part na yun makakatulong talaga. So maybe test cases, not sure, but you can try, guys. You can use it. So test plan also. Yeah.
There. So test it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Matthew. Are there any job positions or a team of prompt engineers out there? If yes, what could possibly be their opportunities for professional development and growth in their roles in technical and non technical jobs?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. No, so actually, prompt engineer is not a job. So it's a method for the developers to use. Actually, not just for developers, for everyone. So yun, yung nabanggit ko kanina, prompt engineering is like structuring your context or your prompts, your code in a better way for AI to understand it. So walang prompt engineers, guys. That's us. That's we are the prompt engineers. So developers, they can be prompt engineers as well. Actually, tayo talaga yung prompt engineers because we produce a lot of context, eh, especially the code. So this is where the AI learns. So yun, wala siyang job. So but developer yan. Maraming job.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question, Seiji. So here's another question from a less experienced developer, right? From Annika. For less experienced developers like myself, would you still recommend using Copilot? Do you think it would prevent them from honing their skills or knowledge if they get used to using Copilot rather than thinking about making the solution themselves?
Yeah, good question, Anika. Yeah, so this is a problem actually right now. But it still depends on you. Eh. It's for me, it's okay to use a generative AI as long as you understand it. So sa mga new developers, and starting to learn development, so it's okay to use generative AI, ChatGPT, Copilot. Basta, if you have generated the code using that, study it. Paano ba ginawa? Paano ba ginawa ni Copilot? And at the same time, gawa kayo ng sarili niyong solution. So I think that's the best way. So don't rely fully on the Copilot itself. And syempre, there's a misconception eh, na there's Copilot, there's ChatGPT. It's easy to create apps already. It can replace developers. No, that's not how it works. So it cannot. Like just one example. You're creating an identity management system. Copilot cannot do that. So it's still the developers. So you don't rely on the AI itself, guys. So AI is learning from you, but it still can't learn everything from you. So yeah, okay mag-rely totally. So study everything. So ang maganda lang kay Copilot is you don't have to look for Google, hindi na kayo kailangan magbasa ng libro. So kanya may gusto ko. Think of it like as a Google din. Na for example, you want to use Stack Overflow. I'll search how to reverse a function. So, isa-search mo na lang siya kay ChatGPT, lalabas na yung function. May explanation naman siya usually. So, have it like, can I generate a code using, can I generate a code that reverses a string using JavaScript with explanation. So, lagyan nyo ng with explanation. So, para mas maintindihan nyo yung mga code. So, don't always rely on the code itself kasi hindi nyo rin sure kung tama ba talaga yun. So, that's my tip for especially for mga nagsa-start maging developer.
There you go, Annika. I hope that answered your question. So Copilot is under Microsoft, Seiji.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Ma'am Cyril. So, saan na siya? GitHub specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And, ayun,
Shanine,
ang ChatGPT
yeah.
din.
Okay. Shanine is actually asking if it is offered together with Microsoft Office 365 package or is it an add-on on top of the basic Office 365 license?
Yeah, it's an add-on but I'm not sure if may package sila. Kasi if I remember, iba yung gamit ni 365. I think it's Bing. It's Bing yung I'm not sure if they have Copilot. Bing kasi yung usually na ginagamit sa mga tools ng Microsoft. Like for example, yung mga Power BI, what's that we call the Power Apps. So Bing yung gamit nila inside. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, Power BI has Copilot. I'm not sure. I haven't used Power BI. So sa mga sa mga analyst. So you can also but Copilot kasi nagamit ko siya for Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. But I think yeah, they're integrating almost all of they're starting to integrate almost all apps already. So
mm-mm.
that's a good yeah. You can search guys on the GitHub docs. So saan siya magagamit.
Okay. So Shanine, there you go. If you need further details about it, you can feel free to reach out to Mr. Seiji here. There's another question from Kim Torana. Torina, I'm sorry, Kim. Is it cost effective for small businesses and startups to use or license generative AI?
Yes, thank you, Kim, for the question. So, is it cost effective? If you really need to be fast or siguro fast-paced talaga yung work nyo. Yeah, I think I can recommend generative AI, but it still depends on the use case. Kailangan nyo ba pa talaga ng generative AI for the developers? So, especially for small business. Kung yung app or yung ginagawa yung product is not really that complicated or not really an enterprise level, I think, honestly, for me, generative AI, it's just like an additional cost. So, kung kaya nyo naman gawin without the help of generative I think there's a no-go for this one. So, yeah, it depends. It depends on the use case pa rin.
Okay. So there's a very quick question from Lou. If does GitHub Copilot have character limitation just like ChatGPT?
Um, Copilot kasi nagra-run siya sa VS Code. So, wala siyang character limitation. So, it's on the editor itself. So, kung ano yung ma-generate ng code, yun. So, for example, like dito sa kanina. So, nag-write ako ng function. So, it just generate the code that it knows. So, I think it doesn't have any limit for that characters.
Okay, thank you very much for answering all those questions, Seiji. There are still a lot of questions, to be honest, but we barely have the
Yeah.
time to accommodate all of it. In the meantime, I'll be asking you to pause for a couple of seconds to take a picture again
All right.
for your second session. So I'll be turning my camera off and my microphone as well. I'll be right back with you afterwards. Once again, Seiji, thank you very much for that great presentation and for spending time to be with us at SoftCon 2023. We're looking forward to having you again. But in the meantime, that's all we have for this session. But before I let you guys go, I would like to remind you that we have a leaderboard. So click the trophy icon on the top right of AirMeet to see who's leading. So if you'd like to win a couple of prizes, then you better start racking up points. We also have prizes for the top 10 from Globe Business and IBM. And don't forget that we will be seeing those hybrid ticket holders tomorrow at SMX. But you can always download the AirMeet app at the App Store or the Google Play. So you can still continue engaging in the app, right? So once again, thank you very much, Seiji, and to our audience who stayed with us. I'll see you in the next one.
All right. Thank you, guys.